Good evening and a warm welcome to a very hot Footy Furnace tonight. A couple of Brownlow medalists alongside me as always. Jimmy Bartel, welcome to you.
Tom.
And James Hurd, welcome to you.
Great to be here, Tom.
So much to talk about tonight, even though there was no men's football this weekend. Before we get into it, the heat map is locked and loaded. We're going to analyse the season of all the clubs that missed out on finals. We've got the Swans there, the D's, the Dogs, Port Adelaide, and also Richmond and West Coast and all the clubs that missed finals. I'm looking forward to that, Hurdy and Jimmy. You've got plenty to say tonight, I reckon.
No, we have. There's 10 disappointed teams out there, and particularly the bottom 5 or 6 at the bottom of the ladder, so keen to get into them. And
the finals fixture is in and locked for the week 1 of finals. It starts on Thursday night, Jimmy, and I cannot wait for this.
Yeah, we're back at the Adelaide Oval again. They played an absolute belting game only a few weeks ago, of course, the Crows and the Pies. Hopefully it's not pouring rain so we can see some slicker ball movement. And then that Friday night, I think a lot of people think the favourite for the premiership will come out of the winner. And we're not saying those teams can't go the long way around, but Geelong and Brisbane, can the Lions get back some of their stars? And the Cats have pretty much got a full fit squad. Let's
get into the big trade news of the day. We reported on 9 News Melbourne tonight that Jordan Ridley, the 2020 best and fairest for Essendon, wants to be traded to the Brisbane Lions. Now, Essendon will say he's committed to 2026. I can tell you tonight he's not. He wants to play for the Lions next year. Clearly the stumbling block here, and it's more than that if you're going to be honest as well, is that he's contracted for another 4 years and the Bombers see him as a very important part of their future. As an Essendon legend, Hurdy, what do you think about that?
Oh, it's disappointing that players want to leave the club. I mean, particularly Jordan, who's been such a terrific player for the club. I know his injuries over the last 2 years, but he's a real leader and a real steady hand as a person around the club. So it's disappointing to hear he wants to leave. But, you know, you're hearing a lot of reports at the moment that a lot of players, not a lot, some players want to leave the club. And it is concerning that, you know, the Essendon Football Club players are trying to get away from, and there's a lot of reasons. It could be the injuries they've had.
Well, that's the main reason. Yeah, the injuries are the main reason for Jordan Ridley. He does have family connections up in Queensland as well, but he's only played 19 games the last 2 years, quad, hip, hamstring as well. So that's the premise for his decision to look for a new home.
It was a big Tomo bomb when it went off today. You've become the big newsbreaker with these sort of stories. But it was quickly shut down by other people in the media, Tom. We saw this report, and this is from the Herald Sun, from a journalist there. I think we can read that. Amid reports he is disgruntled and would like to be traded to Brisbane. Essendon made clear on Sunday he did not once mention a potential move in his recent exit interview. I've heard you quote this line, Tom. It's you get done on the comma.
Yep.
Is this one of those situations?
Well, I never said that he requested a trade to Brisbane. That actually came after that from his camp to Matt Rosa, the list manager at Essendon. Just to dive into that, he mentioned and spoke about in the exit meeting, and it was nuanced, that this year has been difficult and that he has often thought about what it would be like to move clubs and the prospect of a move. So he didn't go the whole way to requesting it, but Matt Rosa, in the days since, was informed in no uncertain terms, Hurdy.
You're confirming tonight that he definitely wants to leave and play somewhere else.
Absolutely. He wants to play for the Brisbane Lions.
And how strong will he be to get there? Because you can say it, you can feel it, but if you've got 4 years to go on your contract and you want to leave, you have got to be adamant and you've got to say, I just do not want to play here.
Yeah, and that remains to be seen how strong he's willing to be with the club. As it stands, Essendon saying he's not going anywhere as an important player of the club.
And we're going to see a lot of this over the next 2 or 3 weeks, aren't we? This is only the first of many at different clubs.
Yeah, that's right. And so Jordan Ridley's at the top there. We believe Sam Draper's more likely to go. We don't know yet, again, to the Lions. Ben Hobbs is out of contract, so it might not be a huge loss. But there's other players that are either going, gone, or looking to go as well. I've got Darcy Parish down there as well. I mean, Essendon would say the same. He's not going anywhere. He's going overseas because he's had injury troubles. But the noise around these players continues, and that's an issue for the Bombers.
It is a big issue. I think the fact that particularly Ridley and Parish have been such really good senior players for them, but injured over the last 2 years and not getting the output, I think the club would be concerned that there's a lot of talk, and we'll see over the next 2 or 3 weeks how many of those players go and how many stay. This is Essendon review. I mean, you have to sum it up as a disappointing year. 6 wins, 17 losses. The start of the year, they looked like they had, you know, they're on their way to a reasonable season, but injuries really did cut them down. The latter position of 15th have dropped from 11th. It feels like they've really just stagnated or gone backwards. What are their needs? Well, it's pretty obvious. They need a new high-performance team. That's been a really concerning thing for them with the amount of injuries they've had.
So could you actually measure Essendon this year with all the injuries? Like, injuries are a reason. Like, every club says they're not an excuse, but they can be a reason. Because there was so many, could they actually bed down anything?
I think you could measure them at the start of the year. The first half of the year you could measure them, not the second half of the year. And the first half was a bit up and down. They won some games, particularly against Melbourne, North Melbourne, St Kilda, where they won some games which were pretty tight. But then against the really good teams, against Hawthorn and particularly Adelaide. Adelaide put 160 points on them, pretty much flogged them in that first part of the game. That's the area that I'd be looking at if I was Essendon supporters. How did the first half of the year go? Against the poorer teams, they were okay, but the best teams, they really struggled.
What do you think they need most, Jimmy? Some ball movement, some midfielders, some runners. I mean, it's difficult to judge when they've got so many injuries, but clearly at the moment they're in a transition phase.
Yeah, they are, and it's finding out who their best 30 are, because you always play with about 30, 32 that you want to play with throughout the year. And again, the numbers point to it there. So they've been brave and admirable behind the footy, but you can't just live back behind the footy because the opposition eventually says, well, you've got to come forward at some stage and you score off the back of that. So some ball movement, transition. I know they've tried to work on their defence, but sometimes the way you move your ball forward can actually set you up really well defensively behind it.
If we can just put that graphic back up, I mean, if you look at their disposal numbers, I mean, they're third in the AFL disposal, even with those younger players out there. But when they were third, their points for metres gained and score per inside 50 were so low. You can't have all that possession and not score. It just means you're trying to hold on the ball to defend, and you'll get caught out in the end. So I think they need a style of play that is a bit more direct, that gets more territory, gets it forward and gets more in their forward half and defend in that forward half.
Yeah, and credit to them as well. They do acknowledge that their high performance department needs to be revamped, and in the process of doing it now, they've spoken to Matt Innes, who's the head of strength and conditioning at the West Coast Eagles, about potentially filling the big shoes there. Let's move to Carlton, another big club under the pump at the moment for missing finals. We know that Michael Voss is going to remain in that position, but Charlie Curnow is the big story out of the Blues in a similar way to what Jordan Ridley is at Essendon. And in another similar way, he walked into his exit meeting, and I don't think he formally requested a trade, but he did speak about his desire to move, specifically to Sydney. But it's also not just Sydney. Like, if there was a deal available at the Gold Coast, he'd get there. If there's a deal available at Geelong, he'd get there. He'd look to get there as well. And this is in stark contrast to what he said publicly before, when he said he's very happy at the club and won't be requesting a trade.
I mean, it's a change of landscape, isn't it? Those bigger Melbourne clubs actually having players wanting to leave and go up north. You know, for a long time, the northern states couldn't get players to go there, but these Carlton and Essendon having players who want to leave is a huge change of landscape.
And this is not a crack at Charlie Curnow, because he says what he has to say at the time. I obviously want to be here. I don't really want to make this about me right now, but I'm playing at Carlton next year. There you go, done. I mean, that's what Dan Houston said last year as well. This is just the landscape where they can't be fully honest because the season hasn't been completed yet.
Yeah, and if you want him to stay, and, you know, of course, you show him all the love, but you want him also to improve too.
Yep.
He's no way the finished product. No one is in football. I know even up until my last season, I was still working on my game. So the big issue for Carlton, which we'll dig into a little bit, is that ball movement going inside forward 50. And we highlighted through the year, over the last couple of years actually, he's one of the biggest culprits for that last kick going inside forward 50. So, yep, we want you, but you're coming to embrace the change. We need to move the ball better, and that comes off the back of who are they going to surround Michael Voss with? Are they going to put some pretty strong hands in there and go, no, we're going to shift the needle and we're going to double down and really zero in on actually where it's been a flaw for us in the last 18 months.
Do you think Charlie plays Charlie's game too much rather than the team? Is that what you're trying to say, that maybe he's got to learn how to play a better game for his team in the system, and also not just bomb that ball in from 55, 60, how those shots
It's on both. It's got to be coached and it's got to be on himself. You take ownership of your own career. That big one that gets the Carlton fans all, you know, excited at the MCG, where he wheels from 60, you know, and thumps through a goal. They go through about one every about 8 or 9 times. Yep. The thing about that one is it's always on, because you can't actually stand in the protected zone anyway. Yeah. But you can hit the ball up. You just at least look for your teammates. Yeah. And what do we say about Carlton? There's no movement on the forward. Why would you move?
Hurdy, you said before that under no circumstances would you look at a trade for Charlie Curnow. Do you stand by that, or do you think there is some deal that the Sydney Swans could offer?
No, I stand by that. I think Carlton has talent at that top end, and they can't afford to lose that talent. They've got to bring talent in underneath, develop what they have. But the difference between, for example, Carlton and Essendon is they have that elite talent at the top end, and if they want to go somewhere, you have to keep players like Charlie Curnow. But as Jimmy said, Charlie has to improve himself and get better and play in the system, but also develop. I mean, every player every year has to develop. So for me, he's a player you just can't get rid of.
So the Swans really want Curnow. It's up to them. They have to pony up, and it won't be...
What would the Swans have that could get...
Well, I don't know what would attract Carlton at all, if there would be anything, but it wouldn't be a Goulden or a Heaney, because the Swans wouldn't do that. It would have to be a pick 9 or whatever their first pick is, and a Logan McDonald and a James Rowbottom, that sort of deal.
But you're just not doing that. I mean, that's just... if Charlie was out of contract or a free agent, yes, but not in contract. Getting rid of the top-tier player like that, for me, you just can't do that.
Fully fit Charlie Curnow is 50-plus goals.
Yeah.
There's not many of them in the game. But when we have a look at Carlton in review, as we're doing for each and every club, I've called this finding the flanks, Tom. Yep. So what we want to find is outside ball movement, speed and run. We know they're as admirable as can be in the contest. No one's ever disputing their contested possession, their clearance, that tough grind. But they need some polish and speed on the outside. So half-backs, when you think about the good sides, Brisbane's pinging off the half-back line. Even, you look at Collingwood, they've got some zip from behind the footy. All the sides have really good zip from behind the footy. Get out of your back 50 to your forward 50 quickly. And then we spoke about the Lions and the Cats. Lots of high half-forwards, mid-sized forward types who can either join in the midfield or they become those link-up players between, again, defence to forward 50. So this is where they've got to identify, do they have it on their list? Or can they go shopping in that space and recruiting, of course? So find that outside to complement what you do really well. You can give up a little bit on the inside to get a little bit better on the outside.
The difficulty Carlton had this year is I think they didn't know exactly what they wanted to be. Like last 2 years before, they wanted to be that hard contested team. They really admired those contested players and the way they went about it. But this year I felt like they brought in some players around the periphery that maybe didn't live up to the standards that their inside mids had in previous years and sort of got halfway in between, similar to the way Melbourne got halfway in between. I think Vossi's definitely has to go and get some better players around the ball users. But then what are they? Are they still going to be that hard contested team, or what do they change their ball movement?
Just a quick one on Jack Silvagni. So St Kilda's interest in him has really only ramped up the last few days. It's been driven by Gubby Allen and the list management team there, probably with Stephen Silvagni to one side, given the obvious conflict of interest. The Dogs were confident. They're not as confident as they once were. I think St Kilda's offer, according to rival clubs, is somewhere between $800,000 to $850,000 a year times 5, which could even trigger Band 1 compensation for Carlton. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing if they can get Band 1 for TDK and Band 1 for Jack Silvagni? So I think he'll meet with St Kilda in the next few days, do a medical, and then it's a matter of whether he wants to go to Collingwood, the Western Bulldogs or Moorabbin. Which brings us to a very early edition of Fan the Flames.
Saturday afternoon, 3W Footy.
Saturday, Rob. We're on crunch time. You're hearing it all on ABC Sport.
So I really like Brian Taylor, but I'm fanning the Flames against him tonight, and this is why.
Interesting year for Charlie Curnow. He's been a frustrated footballer at times. Reports this week, he's told those close to him he wouldn't be against a seat change. The Blues have shut it down. He won't be going anywhere.
It's just that's come from nowhere. As far as I'm concerned, it's been made up.
So,
wow, Tom.
Brian Taylor knows. I would hope that journalists don't just make up stories. And I've kept that as a receipt for the last 6 weeks. And I take it in jest, I smile at it. But clearly we know now that it wasn't a fib or a made-up story. And I would hope that in future, BT would speak to his boundary reporter down there, Mitch Cleary, and get a handle on what the truth is before he said that.
How does it feel? You've had that Brian Taylor then, the story today, questioned. How does it feel as a journalist who, with your integrity at stake, people saying, no, that's not true?
Entirely normal. People denied the Adelaide training camp. People have denied stories. Dan Houston last year. People have denied stories all over the place. And it's entirely normal for that to happen publicly from clubs. I would just think an experienced media practitioner like Brian Taylor should know that stories aren't just made up like that, and it's been proven correct now with Charlie Curnow walking to his exit meeting saying that he'd like a trade. It was shut down. It doesn't mean he doesn't want it. Now, let's move to the trade show, which is coming up post-season. James Hird, you're a part of that. Jimmy Bartel, you'll be part of that. And Cal Toomey will be on that as well. Furnace Trade Edition, October 1st, 8th and 15th. That's 3 consecutive Wednesdays. I'm looking forward to that immensely, as I am week 1 of finals, and there's some big selection news around the place as well.
So Adelaide,
yes,
McElhaney and Josh Rochelle. Will they play? Will they not play?
Yeah, Josh Rochelle won't be back for week 1 of finals, but the aim is, if they lose, for him to play week 2. But he'll be back week 3 if they win and win through.
And Collingwood, Bobby Hill and Bo McCreary.
Bobby Hill's still a long way away. I note that he was at training, which is great to see, and good to see him back out there on the track. But I would still be surprised if he played any part in this final series. Doesn't mean he won't, it's just looking unlikely.
Big Mason?
Mason Cox is just a selection issue, but he's been out of favour recently. McCreary's a genuine 50-50. They're hopeful, but it's not certain at this point.
Would you bring Mason Cox in with the lack of tall talent, the lack of tall timber, the fact that they if you've got to kick the ball quickly forward, you don't have that tall player there to mark the ball.
He does give him the option long down the line. It'd be worth considering.
Yeah, I think it would.
Is it conditions dependent? If it's raining, are you less likely?
Yeah, I think it's definitely conditions.
Yeah, the other one's on the Giants. So Jesse Hogan here, Jimmy, they're trying everything they can to get him up and play, but it's going to be hard, isn't it, with that navicular? Yeah,
and you add in Stringer will be back. I think a couple of his teammates have declared him back in. The other big one is Jack Buckley. They need him back for finals time.
And Josh Weddle, obviously the Giants and the Hawks is a big game. He played 50% VFL yesterday. He looked good. He got through unscathed. If he can come back into the 23, that's a big inclusion for Sam Mitchell's team.
It is, but there's a big difference between 50% VFL and 100% in a cutthroat final at GWS against that midfield as well. That midfield of and also forward line of the GWS Giants. That's going to be a big but exceptional player. So you probably would risk to bring him in.
And Brisbane and the Cats, we mentioned that's a blockbuster on the Friday night. Will Berry get up with that shoulder injury? Look nasty.
Yeah, Brisbane are really hopeful. I think the week off has really helped Berry's chances here. If not week one, then certainly later in finals, they're going to give him every possible chance. And just the narrative evolving out of the Gold Coast Suns. David Swallows played 247 games for the Suns. He was picked one. He was picked up there as a 17-year-old. He's a genuine icon of that football club. He hasn't played for the last 6 or 7 weeks. He's had a PCL injury this year. There's still a chance he could play a role in finals, which I think we'd all like to see from a romantic point of view.
You'd love to see it from a romantic point of view on what a worry he's been for the Gold Coast Suns, but if he's not in the best 23, he doesn't play. Yeah,
it's a very tough one for Damien Hardwick and this week. All right, Players is on tomorrow night. Felix Monhoff is doing a fantastic job. And what a panel he's assembled. Jack Ginnivan has been a fantastic player this year for the Hawks, and Sam Mitchell, Isaac Quaynor as well at Collingwood, and Jarman Impey at the Hawks. So a couple of Hawks joining us on Players tomorrow night. And as always, this show's going gangbusters. You can watch that on YouTube earlier in the evening or after Footy Classified with Sam and the team. Welcome back to Footy Furnace. Let's get to the year in review and start with Melbourne. So they finished 14th, 7 and 16. But before we have a look back at their season, these are the coaching candidates that are in the mix to succeed Simon Goodwin, of course, who was sacked a couple of months ago. Nathan Buckley, I believe, will still get this job if he wants it. Yep. But on the off chance that he decides not to go for it and decides to look elsewhere, then those are the other names very much in the mix. And they've been very impressed with Brendan Lade and Stephen King so far.
So you just said Nathan Buckley has the job if he wants it. So what's the point of interviewing the other gentleman? Well, if you're the other gentleman,
I've heard you talk about this.
I agree with you, Jimmy, because if you think he's getting the job, and why would you go for it? But they must think that potentially. But are they all committed to doing an interview?
Yeah, so that's just get out that list again if you can. That list of coaches are the ones who are in the mix, and the formal chats start this week.
Mix? They're formally going to meet with Melbourne.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that was my point. It's good governance. So it probably should reframe that. Why would the other 5 say, I'm going to go through it if that is...
You know, I'll tell you why. Because it's good for a Brendan Lade to run second in a coaching gig. It's not good if you do it 3 or 4 times, but Adam Kingsley did it a few times, so people start talking about it.
I heard Adam Simpson talk about this on radio about 2 or 3 weeks ago. The process he went through to get the West Coast job. I think he failed at 2 jobs, and what he learnt through that process and what he did the next time. So I think if you're a current senior or a previous senior coach, you don't want to be coming second. But if you're an up-and-coming assistant...
So what's the threshold? What's the tipping point?
Because you can probably assistant.
Yeah, but so 2 or 3 times is fine, but not 4 or 5 times.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I definitely think you're right.
Well, let's review the Dean's season. So whatever new coach has some decisions to make, not only on the veterans, but a lot of the young talent they've got on their list. I like some of their younger guys. They've shown plenty of form. And for me, I just want to raise the question with you, gentlemen, is the big 3, which they spruik about. Max Gawn clearly is a star, but this is their centre bounce attendances. Of course, Pickett needs those sort of minutes. We've seen how dangerous he's been. Petrarca, he can swap with Pickett inside mid and then, of course, going forward. And Rivers can play inside mid. He can go half-back, wing, forward. The big question for me, you two, is I feel like Oliver or Viney, one of them has to learn another position. Because I think the way the game is moving and the way that Melbourne's been played, they've seen enough and been exceptional for a long time. But in the last couple of years, having Oliver and Viney provides too much of the same as far as being that inside, just jam the ball forward, not really hurt you with the kick, but they hurt you with the hands when they win it. But which one of them could potentially...
Well, it has to be forward line because neither of them are great kicks. I mean, off the half-back, that's not going to work. So I think both Oliver and Viney, for their sake, need to play that half-forward role that potentially goes up into a stoppage. Or can Oliver develop into a person who can go forward?
Is it too late at the age of 27 or 28?
It's never too late. But with Oliver's size and his body, can he develop his contested marking? So he can sit in the square for maybe 10 minutes a quarter, 5 minutes a quarter and provide them something new there. I think he can because he's a footy head. I mean, he just loves winning the footy. So why can't he win on the forward line?
Yeah, because I only raise that because, as I highlight, Pickett, coming through the centre bounce.
Yeah.
I think we all acknowledge Langford with another pre-season is going to command more centre bounce, more midfield time. Rivers has shown at different stages he can be a point of difference for them coming through the midfield, and whatever else they add in that midfield, it means someone has to sacrifice some minutes.
Yeah.
But you know that yourself with your Geelong days. I mean, there's some very, very good Geelong on-ballers who had to be pushed out to a wing, half forward, to play different positions. You have to be able to do that. And as Oliver gets older, he will have to do it anyway.
Yeah, do you think this is a finals list? Brad Green said at Simon Goodwin's sacking press conference that he thinks it is. Do you agree that this is a list that could or should be playing finals?
Well, they're a bit like the Carlton question. They need to adjust their game style. They're incredibly tough in around the footy. They win it. I think towards the back half of the year, they tried to move the ball a lot quicker. Simon Goodwin tried to get them going, tried to overlap, and they had some really good games. I think it was against Freo at the MCG where they started to move the ball quickly. Trying to find their forward mix is always a question for the Ds.
It's a list in transition that can get up there reasonably quickly because of the top end of talent, but they have to put some good ball users around the ball and across half-back.
The Western Bulldogs finished 9th, 14 wins, the first team in the top 8 era to miss the finals with 14 wins and a quite remarkable percentage as well. That all played out last Sunday. Hurdy, take us through where the Dogs' season was at and where they should go from here.
Well, they did very well around the ball. I mean, their midfielders are fantastic. They're some of the best in the competition. I think the three of the top 5 rated players in the competition, so they can move the ball well, they can win the contest well. They've got a forward line that is outstanding when it's, with Darcy and a few of the others up there. But what they can't do is they can't defend, Jimmy. I mean, they really can't defend the ground, and they don't defend well around stoppages. If you can get the ball from inside to outside the bubble, and beat the Western Bulldogs there, you've got a very good chance of beating them. The lesser sides couldn't do it, but the better sides normally walked over the top of the Bulldogs, not by much, but they were always able to get across the line because of the midfield depth. And we're going to look here a bit of the action here of the Bulldogs and the Fremantle Dockers. Just being able to get the ball from inside the contest to outside the contest, that's far too easy, Jimmy.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this each time with the Dogs in the run home is if you can tilt the ball onto your side, look at the spread from the Dockers, and the Dockers do this pretty well as a unit, but they get too many dogs caught on the wrong side of the footy, and so it's always the question, is it personnel or is it structure? I think it's a bit of a mix of both. How they structure up at stoppages. Trust that, we talk about Richards and Bont and Libb are still going to win the footy, but what can you put around or as far as the structure with a bit of cover behind it and maybe a defender?
Well, from a structural point of view, the last contest we showed, just having your open side winger a bit further out, maybe rolling a half forward up so they can't play the ball outside as quickly as they can. That's a structure thing, but you're right. The midfielders they had were so attacking and so good with the ball in their hand, I hope you'd be reticent to change them. Yeah,
and further to that point is the opposition was able to come up through the middle. So what Hurdy's talking about, by covering the middle, if you're going to lose, you can have a good loss by you force some boundary and a quick kick. And now who's that bringing to play? At least gives Lobb a chance to come over and intercept, O'Donnell to come over and intercept. So you can lose sometimes, but then win the footy back.
Those were the Lexus of Blackburn keys to the game. Jamari Ugle-Hagan is one of the biggest storylines this off-season as well. So I understand his exit interview won't be held until after VFL finals, and given they had a win yesterday, that could be at least another 2 or 3 weeks until they sit down with Jamara and work out what the future looks like. But this is a delicate conversation which we'll talk about as September unfolds. Port Adelaide, Jimmy, it was a bit of a gap year this year, and we called it from the very start. 13th on the ladder, 9 and 14. They had some amazing wins when they played for Kenny, but overall they underperformed.
Yeah, you're going to get a little bit punny here. Yeah, the keys are well and truly in the new car here, of course. And what kind of grunt do they have under the hood? Some of their work around the footy was pretty average, and we touched on this throughout the year. When obviously they got down by 3-4 goals, they just let the rope go. So again, midfield mix for them. We know they've got some dynamic players around the midfield, but also I want to look at their forward line structure as well. So who wants to be the second big bopper or the second monster on the forward line? Georgiades was absolutely fantastic, but who out of Lukosius, if he can get his body right, Marshall as well. Lord has shown at different times through his career he can be a big physical presence on the forward line. And then you add to the other fact that ground ball game inside forward 50 at different stages has been pretty poor. Now, of course, Rioli retiring as well takes away from that. And then Powell Pepper's had his injury concerns. So ground ball game, and who's going to be the second forward to stand underneath the footy? So Georgiades can still get on the move. If you've got a guy who likes to get on the move, you still need one who can stand down the line and mark the footy. So we don't know what it's going to be like, or we don't know what sort of game style that Josh Carr wants to implement, but they've got plenty of room for improvement around the footy and forward in particular.
There's plenty of room for improvement, but 13th, are you up or down for Port next year?
I think they might hold and maybe go back a little bit while they try and embed his game plan. I just think there's so much off the back of this year. Now, maybe it might be because of their handover transition can be an excuse. But
where's their improvement going to come from?
Well, clearly it has to come from the midfield. If you're 17th, 18th, 15th, 14th, 16th on clear midfield areas.
But will it?
Well, it has to, or are they going to stay exactly where they are?
I think my view is that they are going to struggle next year. They're going to struggle. I don't think they're a top 8 team next year.
Yeah, and the big question in the off-season for them will be if a club comes hard for Zach Butters, like a Hawthorn or a Dogs or a Geelong, and offers 2 or 3 first-round picks, do they balk or do they hold, knowing that they might lose him next year as a free agent? Again, they can match that, but can they get a year ahead of it if that's the question?
I think you're actually entitled to ask him. You're actually entitled to ask him as a club, are you going to stay at the end of the year? I mean, that's a mature conversation.
But what happens if he says, I'm not sure yet?
Well, I think he would know in his heart of heart what he's doing. I think as a club, you're entitled to have that conversation with the player. Do you think you're going to stay? Do you think you're not? And it actually sets the plan that you can put in place. That's the right thing with the player in the club. Yeah,
and those conversations will happen in the next few weeks. Cal Toomey's reported that they've got something like a $15 million deal ahead in front of him, a long-term deal, and he hasn't signed it yet. So the writing's on the wall that at the end of next year, he leaves as a free agent. This year, I'm not so sure. I think still more likely to be at Port in 2026. All right, after the break, we're going to dive into West Coast and Richmond down one end of the ladder. Richmond probably more positive than the Eagles. Stay with us on Footy Furnace.
Footy Furnace, presented by Lexus of Blackburn, where luxury meets performance and footy passion drives everything they do.
Marks out wide, centering kick. Scholes takes the mark. Scholes trying to bring it back. It's a good kick. And Port Adelaide with a dream start. Looks for Scholes, trying to collect on the hop. Good enough to straddle the boundary line from the pocket. Is there anything she can't do? Sends it down to half forward from the Tilda Scholes. Puts on the Jets, races away. She's got 3. Kicks to Scholes, hits the ground running. This will be her 4th. Have yourself a day for Tilda Scholes.
Well, there we have it. The hottest hand of the AFLW round, thanks to Lexus of Blackburn, is Matilda Schultz. 22 disposals, 7 clearances and 4 goals. Gee, she moves well.
I remember seeing her at Gather Round, the show we did at Gather Round, and being super impressed with the way she spoke, but a football is speaking for itself, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. As is Chloe Malloy's at the Sydney Swans. We'll just move the AFLW to the side for the moment and get back to it later because we've got the Richmond Football Club to talk about. Hurdy, they finished 17th, 5-18, but I can't help but think they've actually had a reasonable year.
I think they have. At the start of the year, everyone was saying Adam Uze's team wouldn't win a game, and I think they've played really, really well. I think he's developed a lot of young talent. They've got so much young talent there. Their draft hand last year really brought some good players in the club, and I've been impressed with the way Adam's coached, but also the way the players have responded to the way he's played. Yes, they've made mistakes. They haven't performed week in, week out, but who can forget round 1 against the Carlton when they were 40 points down and got up to win, showing that I think when you're coaching a young group, it's a lot about the commitment and the spirit you have in a club and the belief they get in your system. Then they'll play that way, even when they do get beaten. And there were down days for them, but I was just super impressed by the young talent and the way that Adam coached this year.
And you look at that list, if we keep it up for a little bit longer, the thing I love about their drafting is they've gone for a different mix of players and they've all got a slight point of difference from each other. So we know if you went through them, like Armstrong, key forward. Smiley, who we haven't seen much, is a big inside mid, about 193 as well. You got some kicking in there, you got speed as well. And the other thing that was really great for Richmond fans and a player I think who's got incredible talent, we're seeing Gibkiss back at AFL level. That's a centre-half back they can build around. So they've got point of difference, whether it be midfield, forward, some kickers off the half-back line. You throw in Brown and Banks, who now have been there for a couple of years, starting to feel really comfortable and getting extra responsibility.
In 2024, Hurdy, this was Damien Hardwick's team that Adam Uze had taken over.
Absolutely.
2025, it's now Adam Uze's team, and they played that way.
It definitely is, and they played that way, but this is the area they need improving. You look at the contest here, they just weren't good enough around the contest, and that shows a young team with some, you know, that Hopper in the midfield. They had a couple of senior players, but they need to get better around the contest and their pressure. If you want to be a really good team, you've got to build from the contest, make sure your pressure's right, and then the rest will come around that.
So big challenges lay ahead for the Tigers. Of course, next year they're redoing the punt road, the Jack Dyer stand at Punt Road, so they'll have to get a temporary training facility as well. They're looking at Waverley Park for that. As you reported on your podcast with Eddie Maguire, they're looking to sell a Marvel Stadium home game to either Tasmania or Sydney to pay for that redevelopment. So there's off-field things happening, but so far so good when it comes to their rebuild. The same can't be said for West Coast. And you know, was it last week or the week before we discussed their improvement or their lack of improvement? This was Andrew McQualter talking after the final game of the season after winning one game in 2025.
And I'm certain we've gotten better this year. I really believe that. I know the win-loss record doesn't tell us that, but we've got evidence now to show what we do and the way we're trying to play, and these guys can really stack up against the best. Now it's about getting to work to be able to do it for 120 minutes.
So, Hurdy, is he selling false hope there, or is there genuine evidence to suggest that they've improved?
Look, they say it's internal. They've got measurements. I mean, the stats we're seeing aren't showing that there's improvement, but you don't know. It's been a tough year for Andrew McQualter and the team. What they've been trying to do is exit some older players, exit players that I don't think want to be there, even their captain, and bring in those young players. But if you look at those numbers around the important stats that we see on the outside, we haven't seen improvement. I think, you know, this is partway through a rebuild and a massive rebuild. This is not just a rebuild of 1 or 2 seasons. This is a 5-6 year rebuild that Andrew McQualter's taken on, and hopefully for his sake he gets them all the way there. But there's a lot of work to be done, particularly around the midfield and the way they play in the midfield.
Ground zero is difficult, Jimmy, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're at.
They're almost where all of the expansion teams are at. You're coming from a long way back. They're going to have a flood of young talent come through. So if they get the pieces around Andrew McQualter, as far as the support, which they might already have, but you know, the development becomes incredibly important, the teaching moments, and they've got to chip away. They've got to start from, we're going to win quarters, then into a half, and then obviously then build up from there. That's how far back they're coming.
The most important group of people at that club, other than the recruiters, are the development. Who's developing those young players with their fundamentals, their game sense, the way they play their game? I don't know who the development people there are at the moment, but you want to make sure you have the best there to get the best team you can.
Tough initiation for Andrew McQualter in his first year as a senior AFL coach. More to come on Footy Furnace, Sydney and North Melbourne, and other news around the place as well. Stay with us. You're watching Footy Furnace, and one of the stories of the off-season so far has been the aggressive and ambitious list management strategy that St Kilda Football Club has harboured and now harnessed it, and that's what they're looking to put together. So they've had a year where they've missed finals. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. It looks like Marcus Windhager will stay, not confirmed yet, but they've offered him 4 years now. Tom De Koning is coming as a free agent. Wanganeen Miller is the AFL's first $2 million player, and then you've got Silvagni, who might come as a free agent. Liam Ryan, I think, is likely via a trade, and then others as well, like Lee Kalia. They're going after Flanders, and they're going after Cam McKenzie. I've never seen anything like it from a team who hasn't played finals. I really like it.
I love it. They're standing for something. They're having a crack. And we've probably only highlighted, make sure you take care of the ones you got in your building, which they have with Wanganeen Miller and hopefully Windhager, because I rate Windhager incredibly highly. Because
how do you do both? How do you take care of those players and bring those other players in on big money?
Well, they must have some space in their salary cap, but also the length of those deals. The length of those deals actually allow you flexibility. I know there's different discussions on how long is too long for lengths of deals, but the more years you got up your sleeve, the more flexibility you can move around money for those players. But I think for the Saints, for me, gentlemen, is we know under Ross Lyon, sides can defend, and they can defend really well. So there's a couple of things, and that's probably why Jack Silvagni and Lee Kalia are 2 keys as well, because they need a player to play on the big boys, because you can't keep asking Wilkie to do both, play on the opposition's best and then intercept the footy. I know Caminiti's tried that role as well, but also the other factor too is keep finding other players that can set your game up. Of course, if you get the ball in this man's hands, good things happen, and Jack Sinclair as well. So that's why the importance of getting Liam Henry fit, who's a line breaker, a good ball user. And who else do you have in your sheds there, to use the rugby league term, to get the game started? Because at different times, if the opposition is going to put time going forward, which they do into Sinclair, and they're going to really put more time into Wanganeen Miller, who's going to kick-start their ball movement that gets them out of that really good defensive work into offensive transition.
So that's the Lexus of Blackburn keys to the game. Where do you sit on the Saints, Hurdy?
I think there's a really good smell, like, in a good way. I think Carlton got a bad smell, Essendon got a bad smell of what's happening off-field. But off-field with St Kilda, they've got the right players in, and, yeah, it's exciting to see.
The Sydney Swans started slowly this year. They started to find their form towards the back end of the season, finishing 10th in the end, 12 and 11. And one thing I'd just like to highlight before we go to Jimmy on the more on-field analysis is just some of their recruiting in recent years. I know you can't nail every single draft pick, and they've certainly nailed a couple a few years ago in terms of Chad Warne and Errol Goulden. But since 2019, but certainly in the last couple of years, they don't have any obvious ticks. I mean, we might end up saying that Angus Sheldrick is a tick. Who knows? Logan McDonald might end up being a gun key forward. But it hasn't been a happy hunting ground for them in recent years. And that affects you going forward. Like, if you can't nail some of these picks, then overall, you're going to be struggling to be a premiership contender.
Yeah, time will tell with the picks whether they do work or not. But if you miss 3 drafts, history says unless you can really trade in aggressively, which they've done in the past, it'll really hurt you.
It's also a reflection of how good they've been, because obviously when you're going really well, your side's stable. So a lot of those draftees can't make their way in. I think the obvious question is why there's the Charlie Curnow discussion is no one's really assumed the mantle as the #1 key forward. They've sort of done it by committee, if you will, out of the key position post. Marty at different times, but then has had hamstring injuries, like McDonald has battled confidence and been really good as well. And then he's had injury concerns. And McLean, to me, feels like he's the second ruck option. He's the key forward who can play as the second ruck. So does one of them really want to go, right, it's my post up on the forward line? And probably the next point too is Errol Goulden, absolute star of the game. He'll be All-Australian winger multiple times. But can he play inside a little bit more? So by that, I mean, can he have a few more looks as a centre bounce or be that high half forward that we speak about that comes up? Because I love it when he hits, like almost like 3 irons and 4 irons from about 70 out. Because he can get on the wing and he can do damage, but can he actually get more damage by coming from the inside to the out?
So you want his effectiveness with the ball to be better than just getting a little chip.
I just want the ball in his hand, because that's how highly I rate it. I don't see this as
if he gets the
negative.
ball in tight more, though, is his skills going to go down, or you think he's good enough that he can actually get himself out of those tight corners?
Yeah, I think he can play a similar role to Ed Richards plays.
Yeah.
Ed Richards, who can get on the outside, they've got running power, they get repeat contests, and also maybe that might help him get into those inside forward 50s a bit more, where you hit the front and squares because you're at stoppage. Look, again, it's just a thought. He'll still be All-Australian contention as a winger, so you don't want to...
You just want that balance.
Yeah, it's just maybe it's worth a look, because if you have both Heaney and Warner at times, can you have Goulden around the ball? Their
depth's the thing for me. The best 22, 23 are very good, but as you said with the draft, after that I think they'll fall away.
And Ed Richards did this year what Goulden will be hoping to do next year, as you said. So they just progress into that more inside role. The North Melbourne Footy Club, you've been very positive with Jimmy all year. Hurdy, they won 5.5 games, and they actually finished okay. They had a couple of good performances to finish, a win to end the season. But how far are they off a finals berth? They haven't won more than 10 games in a season since 2019. It's been a long time for these supporters.
Their wins and losses this year, I think, has been disappointing. The fact they've only won many games, they finished 5.5 games, that's been disappointing. But I've seen enough with the way they've played that they've lost some games maybe they shouldn't have lost. I still think that the rebuild is going very well in terms of the talent and the way they're being coached, and you can see a lot of things coming out.
It's just slow, though, isn't it?
It is slow, but things... Look, I might be seen to be wrong next year, but I think next year, after about 5 or 6 games, they're going to really kick up. They do need... When you're a young team, do you have that real grit and determination, just know how to win when things aren't going your own way? I feel like they've lost. They don't quite have that, but that can come in a pre-season. I'm very bullish about where North Melbourne can finish next year. I know you love their percentage, and it's gone up every year, but I just believe with the talent in their list and the way they've been coached, but Alistair Clarkson knows how to coach, and you see the way they play. I'm very bullish about them.
Yeah, it should be aiming for 8 to 10 wins.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a step in the right direction. I don't think...
But I think 8 to 10 is where people would have wanted them this year.
Yeah. It's been a difficult year for those bottom sides. They've been touched up.
Yeah. It's one of those seasons for North Melbourne where sometimes they look pretty reasonable. Other times they got smashed off the park, and that's probably symptomatic of a young team.